What's up guys, Christos here and welcome back for another video. Now, we have a massive week ahead of us in the stock market. It is officially earnings season and we have some of the biggest names reporting their earnings this week. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing 5 companies that I'm keeping a really close eye on during this period. 2 of these companies I actually own myself. 2 of them I'm interested in investing into, and one of them I think, depending on how they report their earnings, could change everything. So make sure you stay tuned for that one. But having said all that, hit a like on the video. Obviously it helps with the YouTube algorithm, and let's get straight into it. So as you can see here, these are all the different companies that are reporting their earnings this week. As you can see, we've got Tesla, we've got Apple, we've got Visa, JetBlue, Ford, Facebook, some of the biggest companies in the world reporting their earnings this week. We've got Pfizer, obviously that's a big one at the moment, AstraZeneca as well down here. This is going to be one of the biggest weeks in the stock market that I have ever experienced in terms of the amount of companies that are reporting their earnings. But obviously I'm not going to go through all of these different companies. What I'm going to do is actually pick out 5 companies that I am extremely interested in and ones that I'm keeping a close eye on. I'm going to be watching all of their conference calls and talk through some of the things that I'm actually going to be looking out for. So let's start off with number 1, and that is after the close. If you're watching this video straight away, you're going to be seeing this earnings come out in a couple of hours, and that is Tesla. Now, Tesla, if you've watched this YouTube channel before, is a company that I don't invest in at the moment. I am extremely interested in, but I'm one of those people that are thinking, am I too late to the boat? Have I missed the thing? When I first started looking at stocks and shares, Tesla was like $80 or something absolutely ridiculous like that, and now it's sitting at around $643 before trading today, and this is going to be a massive earnings call for me. Now, when it comes to Tesla earnings calls, there are so much things that you can actually look out for. I think I listed when I was doing some notes on this video like 10 different things that I'm going to be looking out for in this earnings call, but I'm going to break it down just to the 3 main things that I'm actually going to be looking out for. The first thing that I'm going to be looking for is the supply chain. Now, if you haven't heard already, Tesla has been really struggling with getting hold of chips. In fact, it hasn't just been Tesla, it has been all the different car manufacturers. Ford has come out and said they are struggling on producing chips to create more cars, and this caused a little bit of a backlog in terms of the production of Tesla cars in Q1 and most of Q2. Now, one thing that I am really interested in, because one thing that actually happened was obviously Elon Musk, they put back their Tesla Model S Plaid version, and the main reason for this was because they couldn't get their chips. And one thing that Elon Musk said is that he is planning to give an update on the chips in the Q2 earnings call this evening. So that is going to be a really exciting thing to listen to see how they are getting on with that. But this is obviously going to affect like how many cars they're going to be able to produce over the next couple of years. One thing I have actually noticed is that every time I go onto the Tesla website, because I'm always on there kind of customizing the car, seeing what one that I could potentially buy. Before, when I go back around 4 or 5 months ago, the estimated delivery day was literally a week after I would order it. However, when I go onto there now, it's like 1 or 2 months, sometimes even 3 months, depending on some of the stuff that I've customized on that car. So that kind of tells me that there is some kind of supply chain issue, or at least it was worse than what it was maybe 4 or 5 months ago. But that's one thing I'm looking at. The other thing that I'm really interested in is, of course, what is going on with Tesla's Bitcoin holdings. Now, Elon Musk obviously just attended the B Word conference where he said that both Tesla, SpaceX, him personally, all own Bitcoin in the business account, and it's really interesting to see if he gives an update to what they actually have in their Bitcoin in terms of Bitcoin, because obviously Bitcoin is constantly going up and down. It is extremely unstable at the moment. But if you didn't remember, in February, Tesla disclosed that it used some of its cash on hand to purchase $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. And then in April, it disclosed that it sold some of those Bitcoins. So it'd be really interesting to see what he says, or if he says anything about Bitcoin in this next update, because as it says down here, it did make a lot of the investors nervous when this actually happened and it was announced, but obviously it did wonders for the world of Bitcoin. The final thing that I'm going to be looking at with Tesla is, of course, the Cybertruck. Now, one thing that I'm seeing a lot of news about is the Ford F-150 electric car. There is so much hype going on about it. Major influencers are doing videos on it, and by the looks of things, it's going to be coming out a little bit before the Cybertruck, and it'd be really interesting to see if we get an update on in terms of how many he is actually creating. Obviously, it would be really interesting to see if some people could get their hands on a Cybertruck this year, but one thing that Elon Musk said in January, he said that in 2022 that he is expecting a massive volume production. So that would be interesting to get an update on the Cybertruck. I think there are so many different factors when it comes to actually Tesla in terms of what it's going to do with the price. I don't think we ever really know what is going to happen because, like I said, there are so many different things that they have their hands in at the moment and so many different factors that contribute to their growth. But either way, it's going to be extremely interesting to see what is said. All right, next up we have the biggest company in the world and my first and favorite ever company to invest into, and that is Apple, of course. Now, whilst I don't actually pay too close attention to Apple earnings, just simply because, in fact, the last 4 or 5 quarters, if you see here, the stock price has fallen 4 out of those 5 times, even though most of the time they have beat their earnings. One thing I actually don't do is pay too much attention to Apple earnings, simply because this is the biggest company in the world. It's one of my biggest individual holdings, and in fact it is my biggest individual holding, and I have absolutely no worries for this company in the near future or the long term. If it misses its earnings, I have absolutely no worries. But one thing that I do like to pay attention to with Apple, and one thing that I do find, is that Apple, simply for it being the biggest company in the world, it does have a massive effect on the actual general market. Normally, if Apple have a big miss in their earnings call, the market normally does see a little bit of a reaction from that because simply it controls so much of the S&P 500. I believe it has like a 6 or 7% stake of the S&P 500. I'll throw up exactly how much percentage they actually have of that index, but obviously it's a massive driver to the general economy depending on how well Apple is doing. So that is one of the main reasons I am actually going to be taking a look at this company. But other than that, I'm just going to be looking at these basic figures. I'm going to be just checking whether it's going to beat the overall revenue for the quarter. And then the other thing that I am quite interested in is actually how well it's going to compare to last year on the iPad and the Mac revenues. Now, the reason why I say this is because last year we obviously had the pandemic. Everyone was working at home. This saw a massive boom in iPad and especially MacBook Pro and iMac sales because people are working from home. They need better equipment. And obviously Apple benefited from that. However, now we are kind of moving out of that phase, and obviously hopefully we are anyway. It'd be interesting to see over the last kind of quarter how well these sales have compared to last year. So that's another thing that I am going to be closely looking at. But other than that, that's pretty much all I'm going to be taking a look at with Apple. Next up, really interesting one, and a stock that's done so well for me recently, and that is Facebook. Now, if you didn't realize, Facebook over the last week has saw a really nice rise, like 5.3% on Friday. It went up in one day, and for a company with over $1 trillion in market cap value, 5% is quite a lot of money in terms of shares bought. So that had a really good day on Friday. However, the reason why this had a good day, and the reason why I'm so interested to see how well the earnings play out on Wednesday night after the bell, is simply because, if I can just find it here, of the other social media platforms reporting their revenue. So last week, Snapchat, which was such a surprise because people are starting to think that Snapchat is almost a dying app, with apps like TikTok coming out. Obviously, we've got Twitter, we've got all the other apps. Snapchat seems to be the one that seems to be getting forgotten about. However, last quarter, they absolutely smashed their earnings. Like you can see here, their revenue was more than double, which is absolutely insane. And this actually sparked a massive rise in all the different social media platforms, because obviously there is such a massive emphasis on the ad revenue that is coming into these platforms. I've said this multiple times in previous blog posts and previous YouTube videos. I still think Facebook ads are completely underpriced. Just from my own experience running ads on the different platforms, Google is so much more expensive than these platforms platforms to run your ads on at the moment. And I still think now people are actually starting to wake up to that fact and really taking advantage of some of these platforms, and obviously they are going to benefit from them. Another company that reported their earnings was Twitter stock, and this also beat earnings. This is another social media site, even though I absolutely love Twitter, it's regarded as not one of the kind of leading ones like Instagram, Facebook and TikTok, let's say, at the moment. But still, it climbed 3% on the day. It sent all the other social media platforms, or basically any platform or company that relies on ad revenue, quite heavily for its earnings. In fact, I actually saw a really, really good post from a friend of mine, Matthew, on Instagram. I'll pop his Instagram tag in this video down below. Really good information. But he actually shared some of the revenue streams, some of the big 5 tech companies. But as you can see here, Facebook relies on 97% of ads for its revenue and such a small percentage on other things as well. So Facebook, I personally think in this earnings season, or this earnings call on Wednesday night, is going to see a massive rise depending on how well they have done with their ads. And looking at the other companies on how they've performed, I think this one has almost got a guarantee to absolutely smash their earnings. But as you can see, Google relies massively on ads as well. That saw a massive jump. Microsoft have a smaller percentage, but it's growing. And then Apple don't really have too much. But like I said, Facebook, being the social media giant that it is, relies heavily on ads, and I think that is going to be a massive factor when taking a look at these earnings calls on Wednesday night. Now, I wanted to group another one in the same category as this as well, which isn't so much of a bigger social media platform. It's more of a hidden one, but one that I'm actually quite interested in investing in. It's actually seen quite a raise recently, and that is Pinterest over here, Thursday after the close. Now, this, once again, not really too much to say about this. I'm going to be simply looking at how much money they are making from their ads, because that is going to be one of the biggest drivers to their revenue growth. And yeah, once again, it's a simple thing. I think people are waking up to the fact that social media ads are completely underpriced. So many people say it. I've kind of caught wind of it around 3 or 4 years ago, and I think now people are really starting to wake up. I personally think people are still spending way too much money on TV ads, when those guys, when I'm talking about the big guys like Nike's, Coca-Cola, start realizing that there is so much more opportunities to save money and such a better place to reach out rather than going on the TV and actually going online. I think this ad business is just going to go to the moon. Like, yeah, it's absolutely insane in terms of how powerful this is going to be. One thing I've always said is I think Facebook will eventually become the biggest company in the world, and obviously depending on how well ads and their ads business, obviously they are starting to diversify into other things as well, but ads are going to be a massive driving factor if that is going to happen. Now, final company that I am going to be looking at during this week's earnings call, not a company I own, a company that I use massively for my business, and that is of course Amazon. Now, Amazon, just like Facebook, massive company, and I personally believe they drive a massive portion of the market depending on how well they report their earnings or how well they get on in the market. Obviously, absolutely massive stock price on Amazon. Hasn't had the best past kind of quarter. It's underperformed the S&P 500 by about 5%, if I can remember correctly. But it's going to be really interesting to see, once again, just like kind of Apple with the sales, how well Amazon is going to be doing coming out of the pandemic. Just taking a look at my own personal business as an Amazon seller myself, I have seen a drop in my sales, but obviously that is just taking one person as an example, and I'm trying to kind of put a blame on that of people not spending too much time shopping online at home. This is of course going to be a massive thing that I'm going to be taking a look at. And yeah, all I want to see is, obviously, as you can see here, the last 4 quarters, it's completely crushed its earnings. Can it keep that momentum up as we come out of the pandemic? So that's going to be a really interesting thing to take a look at. Another thing, of course, this is massive news today, by the way, 26th of July 2021, Amazon definitely lining up Bitcoin payments and tokens, confirms Insider. Now, if this is true and this gets announced on Thursday, I think is when they report, this could absolutely shake up the entire world. Bitcoin already today has seen a 10% rise in its price based on this news. I'm pretty sure it's going to be this news that has caught it, because if you think about it, Amazon is it's the biggest marketplace in the world, and think of how many transactions is going to be going through Amazon every day, especially if they actually accept Bitcoin as well. If that gets confirmed in this earnings call, it's going to change the game. Like, I don't even know what's going to happen if that happens. Like, I think Bitcoin could go, I don't know what's going to happen to Bitcoin. Obviously, none of us do, but this is massive news. Like I said, this is only a rumor at the moment. This hasn't been confirmed by Amazon or anyone, but this could be something that they are now forced to actually have to talk about on Thursday, simply because of the prices that it's doing in the market. So this is going to be one of the most interesting earnings calls that I have probably ever listened to. I'm very, very excited for this one. Like I said, I just put a screenshot there. Bitcoin nears $40,000 again, and what they are saying, this is very much based on this Amazon speculation. So they are the earnings calls this week. Like I said, they're just 5 of the earnings calls that I'm going to be paying quite close attention to. If I do get any spare time, I'm going to be looking at other companies. One of the 2 companies that I'm actually going to be looking at are the 2 kind of vaccination companies, just to see how they're getting on. Don't invest into any of them, but I think it's just something interesting to educate myself in, really. Oh, and one more thing that I am actually quite interested in is Logitech. Now, I have so much Logitech equipment. I've got a mouse here, I've got a keyboard Logitech, I've got a mouse mat Logitech. I'm a big Logitech user, and one of my kind of rules is I always look into the companies where I absolutely love the product, and this is something I haven't invested into, so I'm going to try my best this evening to actually look at these Logitech earnings, and that may even cause a spark to me to potentially invest into the company. But having said all that, they are the main companies I'm going to be looking at this week. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you are investing or going to be looking at any of these companies as well alongside myself, make sure you let me know in the comment section down below. But other than that, hit a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.